My name's Jerry Carson. I'm 59, white, and I've spent the last 30 years cleaning up after other people's messes. Literally. I was the night janitor at Jefferson High, a modest public school tucked away in Monroe County, Indiana. Nothing glamorous. Just floors, toilets, gum under desks, and the occasional broken water fountain after a homecoming game. I started in '93, back when mullets were still a thing and people said, "Bless you," instead of "mask up." And in all those years, I never called in sick, never left a job half done. You could eat off those bathroom floors, though, for legal reasons I advise you don't. They told me when I signed on that if I gave 30 full years to the school district, I'd retire with full pension and state-funded health benefits for life. Not exactly a golden parachute, but in a town where benefits usually mean someone lets you keep a company hoodie after they fire you, it was something. And I made it, or so I thought. 2 months before retirement, I had the days counted out in marker on a wall calendar in the break room. May 14th. That was going to be my last shift. I even had a little party planned, coffee and donuts with the other maintenance guys. I'd already started checking out cabins by Lake Monroe. Not luxury ones, just something with a working heater and a porch big enough for a rocking chair. Then Kyle Becker happened. Picture a human thumb wearing cologne and you've got Kyle, the new HR director, fresh from some online MBA program with a minor in corporate gaslighting. He's in his mid-30s, full of buzzwords and teeth. Shows up in a Tesla with out-of-state plates, sporting a Bluetooth earpiece like it's 2009, and starts acting like he owns the damn building. Thing is, Kyle wasn't hired for his HR brilliance. He was Principal Maddox's nephew. You know the type? Calls his uncle UNC, and thinks networking means golfing with your mom's bridge club. He was brought in to modernize school operations, which apparently meant reorganizing staff like chess pieces, cutting costs where it hurt, and making the lunch ladies cry. No, seriously. I saw Donna from the cafeteria sobbing into a hairnet after her hours got cut. Anyway, a week after Kyle arrived, he calls me into his office. I knock, walk in, and he gives me this tight little smile like he's about to offer me a breath mint. "Jerry," he says, tapping on his tablet. "We ran into a small administrative issue regarding your employment history. Right away, my gut started tying itself in knots. I've lived through 2 recessions and a marriage. My instincts are fine-tuned for incoming bullshit." Kyle goes on, "According to our digitized payroll records, it appears there's a service gap between 1998 and 2001. Because of that, you technically haven't hit the 30-year threshold required for full pension benefits." I blinked at him, thought maybe I'd misheard. "I worked those years," I said, calm but tight. "I never missed a week. I've got the scars and herniated discs to prove it." Kyle shrugged like he was talking about printer ink. "Unfortunately, anything not reflected in the current HRIS system can't be considered verified employment under Indiana Public Retirement System guidelines." I could feel my pulse start to throb behind my eyes. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that after 30 years of scrubbing puke-off lockers, hauling trash during snowstorms, and plunging toilets that would make the CDC weep, you're saying I don't qualify for my pension because your system lost my records?" He gave me the kind of smile you'd give a kid who just lost a balloon. "I really wish I could help, Jerry, but rules are rules. No apology, no shame, just that slimy, smug expression of a man who thought he'd outplayed a janitor. And that was the moment. Not when he said I was losing the pension. Not even when I realized I'd been lied to. The moment was when I realized Kyle thought I was just some old man with a mop. And I knew something he didn't. I'm very good at cleaning up messes. And now I was going to clean up his. The thing about working night shifts for 3 decades is you develop 2 very particular skills: silence and observation. You learn to glide through buildings like a ghost and notice things people don't even know they're doing. A janitor, especially one like me, doesn't just clean, he watches. And I'd been watching that school for 30 years. So when Kyle sat there with his $80 haircut and his "unfortunately," I didn't yell, didn't throw a chair. I just nodded once, like I was too old to argue. I left his office and took the long way back to the boiler room. And I started thinking. First, I called INPRS, Indiana Public Retirement System, the next day just to be sure. They told me what Kyle said was technically correct. If your payroll records show a service gap, even a clerical one, you're disqualified from full benefits. Unless you can produce documentation proving continuous employment during that time. But here's the kicker, the burden of proof is on me. Not the district. Not Kyle. Me. 3 lost years on paper. 30 actual years in reality. But paper wins unless you fight it. I hung up the phone and stared at my hand. It was shaking a little. Could have been rage. Could have been age. Hard to tell these days. I sat in that janitor's closet for an hour with the hum of the boiler and that awful lemon-scented floor wax in my nose. Then I remembered something. There was no digital payroll system back then. Back in the 90s, we used those old-school time cards. The kind you punched in with a clang, like starting a shift in a steel mill. I knew where those records were kept. The shed. Now, calling it a shed is generous. It's an old prefab out behind the gym that nobody's touched in over a decade. Last time I checked, it was full of rusty lawnmowers, expired cans of paint, and a family of raccoons that's more tenured than half the teachers. But I remembered helping store a bunch of old employee records in there after a fire inspection in 2004. Boxes of them. Paper trails nobody bothered scanning because nobody thought anyone would need them. I waited until after midnight when the building was dead. Grabbed a flashlight, bolt cutters, and a flask of Jim Beam. Don't judge me, painkillers weren't in the budget. The lock popped easy. Inside smelled like mildew, wasp spray, and the dying breath of the 20th century. I climbed over a stack of broken folding chairs and found the boxes, rows of them, labeled by year. I dug through 1998 first. Found a folder with my name on it. And there it was. My signature. My hours. Every week from 98 to 01. Punch in, punch out. Verified and initialed by 2 different head custodians who'd long since retired. Dusty, faded, but legible. It hit me all at once, the relief, the fury. I just sat on a bucket for a minute and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so stupid. Kyle never even checked. He wasn't trying to save the district money. He was trying to cut out the old guy and bring in his own contractors. I'd heard whispers that he was pushing to outsource janitorial to a specialist company his friend ran in Bloomington. You ever see an old dog play dead? Stay quiet, still as stone, until the moment's right? That was me. And the clock just started ticking. I wasn't going to take back my pension. I was going to take Kyle's career brick by brick. When I was a kid, my dad used to say, "Don't wrestle pigs, son. You both get dirty and the pig likes it." I used to think that meant walk away from trouble. But lately I've been wondering if it just means wear gloves and make sure the pig doesn't get up. Let me tell you about Kyle's pig pen. 2 weeks after our little HR conversation, he was strutting around the school like he'd invented laminated posters. Started parking in the spot labeled visitors even though we all knew he had a reserved one. I guess parking diagonally across 2 spaces made him feel powerful. Maybe virile. Who knows? Every Monday morning he held optimization huddles in the teacher's lounge where he'd pitch garbage ideas like installing motion sensor soap dispensers to reduce overhead. He talked like a man who's never used a plunger. He didn't know the difference between a pipe trap and a bear trap, but that didn't stop him from having opinions about facility budgets. Meanwhile, I kept doing my job quietly. Cleaning. Listening. Gathering. I started noticing patterns. Shipments arriving, but nothing being unpacked. Work orders signed off, but no repairs being done. Then, one night, I saw a delivery driver drop off 6 boxes labeled disinfectant foam packs and stack them in the storage closet. I thought, great, more cleaning supplies I didn't order. Next day, they were gone. That's when I really got curious. I pulled the security footage. Nothing in the camera feed at first glance. But I know the building. I know the blind spots. One of them? That south stairwell door near the gym has been busted since 2007. No camera covers it fully and the lock clicks but doesn't latch unless you slam it. So I set a trap. That Friday night, I left one of the boxes unopened, taped it shut, and scribbled a small red X on the bottom corner with a Sharpie. Then I left it by the back custodial closet, half hidden behind the mop buckets. Saturday morning? Gone. Checked the camera? Nada. But the door? I checked it at 11 p.m., latched. I checked again at 4 a.m. Hanging open. Someone had a key. Not a master key. Only 6 people have one of those. Mine, plus 3 senior staff, the maintenance foreman, and Maddox. So I started looking into those vendor invoices Kyle kept dropping off in admin mailboxes. I swiped a few from the bin before they got processed. All of them billed to a company called Brightspark Sanitation Services. Never heard of them. I looked them up. They had a website. 1 page. No phone number. No photos. Just a Gmail contact and a mission statement that sounded like it had been written by a marketing intern on a sugar high. I checked the state's business registry. Brightspark had been incorporated 7 months ago by a man named Brian Keller. That name sounded familiar. It should have. Because Brian Keller wasn't just some random entrepreneur. He was Kyle's old roommate from Purdue. LinkedIn confirmed it. I even found a photo of them at some HR conference in Vegas, grinning like frat bros who just invented a new kind of tax fraud. And you know what sealed it? The shipping address Brightspark used for all those invoices? It was the school's own loading dock. They were charging us to deliver our own supplies, then hauling them right back out and pocketing the funds. It was a shell company, a scam. And Kyle thought no one would notice because he figured everyone in this building was too tired, too old, or too underpaid to care. But I noticed, and I cared. And I had the keys, the tapes, the logs, and now the motive. I wasn't just going to take back what he stole from me. I was going to torch his entire paper castle and make sure Uncle Maddox choked on the ashes. Some men hide their secrets in locked drawers. Others just leave them standing in the hallway at full volume, wearing a Bluetooth earpiece and a guilty conscience. Principal Maddox wasn't a bad man. Not originally. When he first took the job 10 years ago, he tried to do some good, repaired the AC system that had been coughing since the Clinton years, upgraded the gym lights, even pushed for better security after that rash of car break-ins. But something shifted a few years back. Around the time he started wearing those $900 loafers and drinking coffee out of a mug that said, "I'm not bossy, I'm the boss." I think the new school board made him nervous. Or maybe it was the divorce. Either way, the man stopped looking out for the people under him and started managing upward, saying yes to every cost-cutting idea, no matter how stupid, just to make the spreadsheet smile. And hiring his nephew? That was a career move, not a family favor. See, Maddox didn't know Kyle was dirty. Not yet. But I was going to make damn sure he found out. And in a way that would leave a bruise. I spent the next week compiling everything I had. Invoices, shipment logs, video timestamps, even screen caps from LinkedIn showing Kyle and Brian Keller arm in arm at some corporate retreat in 2017. I didn't want a gotcha. I wanted a case. Something airtight. Something that would make anyone who saw it go, oh damn. Then I remembered something important. Back in 2009, the district did a full audit of school security systems. They updated our servers and gave us a cloud backup system for building footage. The goal was to keep 30 days of rolling video from all hallways, exteriors, and delivery areas. But nobody ever logged into it except me. I was the one who ran the monthly checks, deleted the junk files, and made sure the timestamps stayed synced. So I pulled the last 6 months of footage and started watching. It was all there. Kyle receiving boxes from Brightspark. Kyle wheeling them back out under the cover of night. Kyle entering and exiting the building during off hours, using the staff entrance even though his badge was flagged daytime only. He thought no one would check. That's the thing about arrogance. It blinds you to the quiet men in the corner with long memories and a master key. The next step was delicate. If I went to Maddox directly, he'd just cover for Kyle. Family's family, after all. But if I leaked it in a way that forced his hand, made it so he had to ask the questions before the school board started asking them, that's where Donna came in. Remember Donna? Cafeteria staff. Sweet lady. Makes the best cornbread in Monroe County and cusses like a sailor when you let the mashed potatoes run dry. Donna was on her 3rd warning for emotional outbursts. She was mad as hell after Kyle cut her hours. So I handed her a manila folder one morning with a note that said, If this doesn't get his attention, nothing will. Slip it under Maddox's office door during lunch. She didn't ask what was in it, just winked and said, "Damn right." At 12:43 p.m. that day, Maddox came out of his office looking like someone had just farted in his soul. He was pale, sweating. He held the folder like it was radioactive. And Kyle? He wasn't in the building. I imagine Maddox called him immediately, because about an hour later, the front desk got a notice from HR that Kyle was working remotely for the week due to illness. "Sure, buddy. Hope your laptop doesn't catch the flu." I played it cool. Didn't change my routine. Just polished the floors outside Maddox's office a little slower. Heard some voices behind that door, tense ones. And one name repeated more than once. Bright Spark. That night, I made the final move. I uploaded everything, documents, video clips, scanned signatures to a secure folder online, locked it behind a random URL, and wrote one short, polite email to the chair of the school board. You might want to look into the procurement process at Jefferson High. Start with Bright Spark Sanitation Services. Here's a link. No need to thank me. Just clean up your mess. The next morning, the school board scheduled an emergency financial review. Maddox didn't show up for work. And Kyle? Kyle was about to learn what happens when you underestimate the guy who cleans the floors you walk on. You know that moment in a Western where the saloon doors swing open and everyone goes quiet, waiting to see who's about to get shot? That was the vibe in the main office the Monday after the school board got my little gift. Nobody said anything. Not to me. Not to each other. The secretaries suddenly stopped gossiping about divorce court and started typing like they were trying to outpace a SWAT team. By 10 a.m., 3 board members were seen walking into Principal Maddox's office. Not uncommon on paper, school boards show up now and again, but not with legal counsel in tow. And definitely not looking like they just swallowed a stapler. I watched them go in while wiping down the trophy case outside the main office. There's an old plaque in there from 88 for Best Budget Compliance or something equally ironic. I gave it an extra polish that morning. Felt appropriate. Inside Maddox's office, voices were tight. No shouting, just that kind of corporate panic that sounds like everyone's trying really hard not to yell. Then came the part that really made me grin. The superintendent showed up. Now, that is rare. See, Monroe County Schools doesn't play around when it comes to financial impropriety. We're a public institution and public money's a sacred cow around here. If you even look like you're mishandling taxpayer funds, the consequences rain down hard and fast. Indiana law isn't kind to fraud involving school budgets, especially when it touches federal grant money, which we just received the year prior for COVID sanitation improvements. Remember those disappearing disinfectant packs? Yeah. Federal. Grant. Funds. That's not just a school problem. That's a FBI problem. By noon, Maddox was in full damage control mode. He canceled the staff meeting he'd scheduled that morning, which meant nobody got their weekly dose of bland muffins and district jargon. The rumor mill was on fire. Donna swore she saw him shredding papers in his office, but I didn't ask how she knew that. Donna knows everything. I assume she has informants. Then came the kicker. At 2:27 p.m., a district IT van rolled up and 2 guys in polos walked into Kyle's vacant office. They weren't tech support. They were collectors. They took his work laptop, removed a desktop CPU tower, and left without saying a word. Just walked out carrying Kyle's digital trail like it was radioactive. That's when it hit me, this was really happening. The trap had sprung. They weren't trying to quietly resolve things behind closed doors anymore, they were preserving evidence. Kyle's little side hustle? It had become a full-blown liability. Later that night, I logged back into the security system. Not to spy, just to tie up loose ends. I made sure every file I had was triple backed up to encrypted cloud storage. I deleted my tracks, scrubbed access logs, and packed away the originals in a fireproof box in my garage, right next to a half-used bag of cement and an unopened fishing rod I'd been saving for retirement. And speaking of that, I got a voicemail around 6:30 p.m. from an outside payroll consultant. Said the district was revisiting discrepancies in legacy employment files and that I might be contacted soon to assist with clarifications. You could practically hear the legal department writing it as he spoke. I didn't call back. Not yet. The thing about dust? It always settles. But if you want the right people to choke on it first, sometimes you have to wait just a little longer. Besides, I had one more move to make. A move that would ensure Kyle Becker didn't just lose his job, but that he'd never set foot in a school district again without someone pulling his file and seeing what kind of man he really was. Because cleaning a floor is one thing. Cleaning a name? That's personal. There's a special kind of silence that falls over a workplace when the wolves are circling. Nobody says it, but you can feel it. That Tuesday morning, I walked in and the air in Jefferson High was thick. Teachers whispered in hallways. Office staff kept their heads down like kids who'd just broken a vase. Even Coach Robbins didn't make his usual off-color joke about cafeteria chili. The man once cracked a colonoscopy pun during a tornado drill, and now he was silent. Everyone knew something was happening. But no one wanted to ask what. Except me. I already knew what. That morning, the school board released a special communication via email. The subject line said Transparency and Fiscal Review Initiative, which is bureaucrat speak for we're covering our asses and someone's getting fired. I opened the memo on the staff lounge desktop. It was 5 paragraphs of warm, wet nothing. But buried in the 3rd paragraph was the bombshell. Until further notice, all procurement processes related to custodial and facilities management are suspended pending external audit. Boom. Bright spark was dead in the water. Kyle Becker, aka Discount Enron, was about to find himself in the middle of an audit swamp, and I hadn't even taken the real swing yet. See, a few years ago, I'd helped the assistant principal recover files after a ransomware scare. IT was slow, so I used a trick I picked up during a weekend class at the community college. Didn't make me a hacker, but it did leave me with admin access to our procurement server for about 7 months. I never used it, but I also never lost the backup credentials. That Sunday night, I logged in and downloaded the full vendor ledger. I wasn't just going to get Kyle fired. I was going to make sure everyone who signed off on those payments had to explain their signature to a room full of auditors in cheap suits and government ID badges. Then I did something I hadn't done in decades. I bought manila envelopes. I spent hours printing out every invoice, every duplicate payment, every shipment confirmation that led nowhere. Highlighted the fake vendor addresses. Circled the PO numbers that looped back into dummy accounts. I even threw in a copy of Kyle's buddy Brian Keller's LLC filing with the Indiana Secretary of State. Each envelope got a cover letter, neatly typed, no frills. This information was compiled by a concerned employee with full access to building maintenance, inventory, and security records. All evidence provided is verifiable through district systems and public business databases. No name. No signature. Just the facts. I mailed one to the Indiana State Board of Accounts, another to the Office of the State Superintendent, and a third to the local ABC affiliate newsroom in Bloomington. Attention, investigative team. Then I sat back in my recliner, poured a splash of bourbon, and watched Wheel of Fortune like a man with a secret. The very next morning, 2 men in Navy sport coats came to the front office asking for Kyle. One of them flashed a badge, not police, but close. Office of the Inspector General, maybe? They didn't say. Principal Maddox looked like a man sitting on a memory foam pillow soaked in hot sauce. I passed him in the hall on my way to the custodial closet, and he looked right through me. Pale. Twitchy. Like he'd seen a ghost. And Kyle? Still working remotely. Still sick. Still nowhere to be found. But that didn't stop someone from clearing out his desk that afternoon. I watched from down the hall as 2 admin interns packed up his things. The desk wasn't even locked. Rookie mistake. Inside, protein bars, cheap cologne, and a stack of unsigned performance evaluations, mine included. I took a mental snapshot. That was the moment the paper tiger finally caught fire. But I wasn't finished yet. No, not yet. You see, revenge isn't just about justice. It's about remembering. And I was going to make damn sure they never forgot me again. There's a smell schools get when they're in trouble. Not like sweat or spoiled milk. No, it's this cold, papery scent like freshly printed agendas and panic. You'll know it when you smell it. That Wednesday, Jefferson High reeked of it. By lunch, 3 teachers had told me in whispers that something serious was going down. One even claimed Maddox got a call from the state attorney general's office and had to take it in the copy room because his own office felt compromised. That was probably Donna's embellishment, but honestly, didn't seem that far-fetched anymore. The school board had called an emergency internal meeting at 3:15 p.m. in Conference Room C. Now, I've been working there long enough to know that Conference Room C only gets used for two things: disciplinary hearings and admin-level OSHA situations. It doesn't even have a whiteboard, just a sad fake fern in the corner and one window that hasn't opened since Bush was in office. And when they do use it, they clear the schedule, close the blinds, and nobody, not even the secretaries, gets to peek inside. I knew I wasn't invited. I also knew how to hear every word. You see, years ago, I helped install a ceiling-mounted projector in that room. The maintenance guy who ran cable through the drop ceiling left a tiny hole in the tile above the utility hallway. It faced right into the conference room. Nobody ever noticed. I call it the janitor's balcony. So, at exactly 3:12 p.m., I slipped out of the boiler room, went up the service stairs, and climbed into the crawl space. I laid on my stomach with a bottle of water, my little notepad, and a mint from the teacher's lounge. You know, something to suck on while people's careers ended. Below me, Maddox, the superintendent, 2 board members, the district's legal counsel, and one tired-looking rep from the Indiana Office of School Accountability. All seated around the long table like it was a funeral. The lawyer opened first. We received direct documentation from at least 2 sources confirming fraudulent activity linked to Bright Spark Sanitation. Specifically, payments authorized by Kyle Becker without full board approval. The rep chimed in, "Our preliminary review of procurement history shows over $84,000 paid to this entity within a 6-month period. Deliveries were inconsistent and in some cases non-existent." Maddox tried to shift in his chair, but it made a noise like a balloon losing air. "He told me it was a transitional vendor," Maddox said weakly. "Said it was approved through district channels." "Which channels?" the superintendent asked. Not angry. Just flat. He said the board had been briefed. No one was briefed, the board member cut in, eyes like twin ice picks. And Bright Spark's business registration traces to his former college roommate. That alone raises criminal implications. There was a long silence. You could hear someone's stomach gurgle. Then Maddox said the words I'd been waiting for. I should have verified. I didn't know it went that deep." The superintendent closed her folder. "Becker's laptop data has been pulled. If we find evidence you knew more than you're claiming, you'll be added to the investigation. For now, the board is requesting your administrative leave, effective immediately." Maddox didn't argue. He just slumped. In the quiet that followed, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered sitting across from his nephew being told my 30 years of work didn't count because of a paperwork discrepancy. I remembered him cutting staff hours while secretly signing off on fake invoices. And I remembered the 3 years of my life they tried to erase like I was just some smudge on the ledger. Nah. No pity. Just purpose. As the meeting ended and they filed out, faces tight, eyes averted, I backed out of the crawl space and made my way down the hall like nothing had happened. Just an old janitor finishing his rounds. At 4:22 p.m., a district-wide email hit inboxes. Effective immediately, Kyle Becker is no longer employed by Monroe County School District. Principal Maddox will be on extended leave pending audit results. Please direct all questions to the acting superintendent's office. I didn't open it until I was already home, shoes off, heating pad on my back. I read it twice, smiled, and deleted it. I already knew how it ended, but there was still one more thing I had to do. One more thread to pull before the story wrapped up. And this time it involved the press. I've never been much for the spotlight. Never joined the PTA, never spoke at staff meetings, never once used the intercom system in 30 years, even when that squirrel got into the music room and turned our spring concert into a hostage situation. But this was different. Because I didn't want a spotlight. I wanted a lamppost. And I wanted Kyle Becker tied to it with every fake invoice pinned to his chest like a damn sash. So I made a call. Or, well, technically, I sent a tip form. Anonymous, of course. Channel 4's investigations desk. They call it Who's Your Watchdog. Usually they cover things like contractor kickbacks, embezzling superintendents, or the time a city councilman used public funds to build a koi pond. Perfect. I didn't include a sob story. No emotional appeals. Just facts. File names. Timeline. Dates. Footage links. And one very concise subject line. Public school fraud, Monroe County, $80,000 plus, federal grant misuse, procurement corruption. Source, internal. 2 days later, a nondescript white van pulled into the Jefferson High parking lot around 8:30 a.m. A guy in a windbreaker and khakis got out. Sunglasses, press badge. Channel 4. He spent 20 minutes getting stonewalled by the front office before being escorted out with tight smiles and no comment. I know because I was buffing the trophy case again. That thing's never been shinier in its life. But he wasn't there to talk. He was there to film. The next morning, there was a news teaser on their 6 o'clock broadcast. I caught it while eating eggs at the diner. School funds missing? Channel 4 investigates procurement fraud at Jefferson High. Tune in at 11. I damn near choked on a piece of toast. That night, I sat in my recliner with a notepad in one hand and a beer in the other like I was about to watch game tape. And there it was. Grainy nighttime footage of Kyle unloading boxes. A voiceover walking through the Bright Spark Shell Company setup. Public records confirming Brian Keller's address matched the billing information. A digital forensic expert explaining how federal COVID grant funds are legally protected under Title 18 U.S. Code Section 666, which, in case you're curious, covers theft or bribery concerning programs receiving federal funds. In short, it's a felony. Midway through the segment, they aired a quick statement from the school district. We are cooperating fully with investigators and taking this matter seriously. Personnel decisions have been made accordingly. Personnel decisions. God, I love euphemisms. But what really got me, what really landed, was when they read the closing line of my anonymous tip aloud, the one I typed at 2 a.m. in sweatpants after a 4-hour scan session of shipping manifests. If you want to know who protects a building, ask the janitor. We don't just clean up messes. We remember who made them. That hit different. And apparently it hit home for more than just me. The next day, the district office started getting calls. From parents, local journalists, even a state rep who went on Facebook saying he wanted to restore financial trust in our public schools. Gotta love an opportunist, especially when they're useful. I didn't gloat, didn't strut. But when I passed Maddox's old office, now dark, door locked, nameplate gone, I took a breath, the kind you don't realize you've been holding for years. Still, there was one final piece of unfinished business. One last box to check before I could close this thing out, put my boots up, and finally retire with more than just a pension. I wanted an apology, not from Kyle. He was probably halfway to Florida by now, trying to sell a pyramid scheme to other HR rejects. No, I wanted it from the district, and I had a feeling they'd give it to me, whether they wanted to or not. When you're a janitor, you learn to spot leaks before the ceiling caves in. You hear them before they drip. You smell them before they rot. That's what this situation had become for the Monroe County School District. A slow, steady leak in the ceiling of public trust. And now, after the news story hit, everybody smelled it. Parents were calling. Board members were giving statements they barely understood. Kyle had vanished from LinkedIn. And the district? They were scrambling like someone lit a fire in the teacher's lounge during nap time. I knew the next move wouldn't be mine. It would be theirs. And it came on a Thursday morning in the form of a carefully worded email, sent from a real person this time, not a no-reply account. Subject line, clarification and resolution of employment record discrepancy. I almost laughed. Inside, they acknowledged a record-keeping oversight that led to temporary confusion surrounding benefit eligibility. They stated in those charmingly bloodless legal terms that I was in good standing with full credit for continuous service from 1993 through 2023, and that my full pension and health benefits would be restored immediately, with retroactive corrections. Nice try, I thought. But no, they wanted it quiet, smooth, paper trail fixed, no noise, no acknowledgement of what they'd done or who'd tried to cut me out. But I'm not a smudge you can erase. I'm the guy who holds the keys to the building. So I forwarded the email to a friend of mine, retired now, used to be a union rep before they gutted the custodial contract years ago. He read it, called me, and said, "You want this fixed, you get it in writing, publicly, or they do it again to the next guy." He was right, so I responded, Not rude, just clear. I appreciate the restoration of my benefits. However, given that this situation resulted in months of financial uncertainty and nearly derailed a 30-year retirement, I'd like a public acknowledgement of the error and my service. Not for ego. For the record, I assume the district, now valuing transparency, will have no issue with this. Please advise when the statement will be made. 12 hours later, I got a reply. The board had voted to issue a formal acknowledgement at the next public meeting. They'd also be issuing letters to affected employees because guess what? I wasn't the only one. 2 other maintenance workers had similar paperwork discrepancies. One of them quit early, the other switched to part-time because they thought they'd lost their benefits. That right there? That's what sealed it for me. It was never just about me. At the next board meeting, they made the announcement. I didn't attend. Didn't have to. Channel 4 was there. The same reporter from the van. He recorded it. The board would like to extend a public acknowledgement to Mr. Jerry Carson for 30 years of dedicated service, and to apologize for the administrative oversight that caused an interruption in his retirement processing. That was all I needed. I sat on my couch with a cold beer and watched them say my name. Watched them choke it out like a cough they couldn't suppress. No excuses. No half-truths. Just acknowledgement. Justice doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it wears steel-toe boots and smells like floor wax. And as far as I was concerned, my work there was done. A week after the public apology, I turned in my keys. All 17 of them. One for every closet, boiler room, storage shed, stairwell, and secret hallway in Jefferson High. I laid them gently on the front desk, each tagged and labeled because a janitor never leaves a mess behind. Mrs. Plimpton, the secretary, looked up with glassy eyes. "You really going?" she asked, like I'd just told her the son was retiring too. "Yup," I said, sliding a folded note across the counter. "If anybody ever needs to find the breaker box behind the auditorium curtain, it's all in there. Wiring's still weird from that 2003 lighting upgrade." She nodded. Said nothing else. Just stood and saluted. Like I'd served in a war she didn't fully understand. Maybe I had. I walked the halls one last time. Past the cafeteria where I'd unclogged drains during prom. Past the gym where I once mopped up a trail of glitter vomit after a spirit rally. Past the teacher's lounge where Kyle once joked that I should have gone into HVAC if I wanted a real pension. And finally, past my old custodial closet. I paused. Opened it. Still smelled like lemon cleaner, rust, and memories. On the back wall, taped above the slop sink, was a quote I'd scrawled years ago during a rough week. It was still there, faded but readable. "They never see you until it's too late." The janitor. Damn right. 3 months later. I wake up now to birds and silence. My cabin sits about 40 miles south of Bloomington, tucked between a line of sycamores and a lazy bend of the Salt Creek. 2 bedrooms, 1 dog, Scout, a rescue mutt, thinks he owns the place, and more peace than I've had in decades. I fish in the mornings. Do light woodworking in the afternoons, small stuff mostly. Shelves for the neighbors. A porch swing for a retired couple down the road. People pay in cash or pie. I accept both. I still get mail from the district, mostly junk. A commemorative plaque came last week, along with a handwritten note from the new facilities director. Said they've reviewed all vendor relationships district-wide and are rehiring full-time custodial staff after years of outsourcing. Guess I started something. Guess that matters. Sometimes I think about Kyle. Last I heard, he lawyered up and is under state investigation for misappropriating public funds. They say Bright Spark might have been used at 3 other schools, but nobody's talking on the record. I don't really care anymore. Let the system chew on him for a while. Yesterday, I opened a letter with no return address. Inside was a single typed sentence. "You don't know me, but my dad worked maintenance for the district in the 90s. I remember how proud he was. Thank you for fighting back." I pinned it on the fridge, right next to the copy of my pension letter and a picture of me holding a fish bigger than my leg. Funny thing about revenge, it doesn't always come with fireworks or a final showdown. Sometimes it's a slow burn, a quiet cleanup, one last sweep before you shut the door for good. And let me tell you, I've never cleaned anything more satisfying in my life.